Liebe Zuschauer, ganz herzlich willkommen zu Inside Wall Street und mein Gast ist heute Jim Rogers. Er ist um die Welt gereist, er ist eine Hedgefonds-Legende und heute hier. Thank you for joining us.
I am delighted to be here, Manuel. It's nice to see you again.
Jim, the European Union got the Nobel Peace Prize, so is this a good sign for the whole crisis in Europe?
It shows you how absurd the Nobel Peace Prize has become. The people who've gotten in the last 5 or 6 years are an embarrassment. Why didn't they give Europe the Nobel Prize for economics? It would have been just as absurd.
Two American guys got the business prize, so maybe you guys are better than we?
Manuel, in that prize started in 1969. America was on top and Europe was on top. Asia was in the bottom. Since 1969, no Asian has ever won the Nobel Prize for economics. The Asian economies have gone like that. The Western economies have gone like that. The Nobel Prize for economics is even more absurd than the Nobel Prize for peace. What an absurd prize.
But this is maybe more a political thing?
Of course it's political. They're both political. Why do you pay attention? I know you have to report on things like this, but this is an embarrassment.
So how do you see the crisis in Europe at the moment?
Well, the crisis in Europe continues to get worse. Every country in Europe has higher debt this year than last year. Every country in Europe, or nearly every country, will have higher debt next year than 2012. The situation is getting worse. It's not getting better. When I said maybe Bulgaria will have better debt but everybody else is going to have worse debt.
But also when you look to the ESM, it's not a solution for you?
No, is it a solution for you? A higher debt from every country in Europe? That's not a solution. Manuel, the solution to too much debt is not more debt. That's not the way you solve this problem.
Should we solve all these banks in Spain and everywhere?
Well, we should. The ones that are bankrupt should go bankrupt. That's the way economics is supposed to work. You can try to continue to prop them up. The Japanese have done this for over 20 years. They have 2 lost decades. Europe's going to have a lost decade. America's going to have 2 or 3 lost decades. This is not going to work.
But when the banks are going bankrupt, maybe the whole financial system is going bankrupt or...
But, Manuel, we've had banks go bankrupt for hundreds of years. It's not the end of the world. It hurts for a while. You clean out the system and you start over. But continuing to pile up more and more and more debt is not eventually the whole thing will collapse. I had rather take some pain now than take worse pain in 3 years or 4 years. The Scandinavians in the early 90s had this problem. They had a horrible time, had a terrible 2 or 3 year period, but since then they boomed. I'd rather do it that way than this way.
Do you have any solution, any recommendations?
Yeah, let people who are bankrupt go bankrupt. It's not fun, but if you do it now, if you got everybody in a room and said, okay, you're going to go bankrupt, you're going to survive, we're going to have some pain, we're going to start over, then you could solve the problem. If you wait until the market says, that's it, we're not going to give you any more money, then there is no hope. Then everything collapses and it gets much worse than doing it this way.
Should a country like Greece also go bankrupt?
Of course, they are bankrupt. What do you mean should they go bankrupt? They already are bankrupt. They've been spending money they didn't have for a long, long time. And many people that are bankrupt. You don't solve the problem of bankruptcy by giving them more debt. That does not work.
Let's have a look to the U.S. economy. We saw some economic data becoming better, like the unemployment rate, but is this only like a trick before the elections?
Manuel, as we've talked before, there's an election in November of 2012 in America. Of course there's going to be good news. Whenever there's an election, politicians put out good news. Germany has an election next year. I promise you there's going to be more and more good news. South Korea has one now. There's a lot of good news. Whenever there's an election, somehow good news comes along because politicians like to keep their jobs. This is the way it works. In December or January, the news will be revised. It'll start over, but by then the election's over.
So in the end, Obama has a good team and he will win?
I don't know if Mr. Obama has a good team. I certainly wouldn't say that, but it's very difficult to unseat a sitting president in the United States. The Republicans have only been able to do that once in the past 100 years. So I would, if I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would bet on Mr. Obama, but things can change.
there are these prejudices that all these guys here on Wall Street are Republicans and vote for Romney. So what do you think? Are these people here more conservative? Are you more conservative?
Manuel, I will not vote for Mr. Obama or Mr. Romney. I will vote for a protest vote because both of them are hopeless as far as I'm concerned. So I had rather vote for the protest. I'm not going to waste my vote on a Democrat or Republicans. Both of them are useless. Both of them they cause the problems. Why should I vote for them?
In Europe, for example, in Germany, we have like 5 parties. Here, there are just 2. Is this only the chance to vote for one worse or the other worse?
Well, I agree. In my view, a pox on both of a curse on both of their houses. Yes, I would much prefer it if there were other choices, other Bible choices in the United States. I don't know why we've evolved this way, but we have. Maybe that's one reason I keep voting for other parties. Maybe someday one of those other parties will rise up and we'll have more choices.
But have a look back to the economic data. There was still, even if we say there's maybe a little manipulation before the election, they are better than like a month ago.
Well, the reported numbers are better than a month ago. I don't pay too much attention to them because these numbers, first of all, always look backwards. Markets look forwards. And second, the numbers are always revised. There's never been a number that wasn't revised to later. Why do you bother? When the real numbers come out, if they're real, it's already 3, 4, 5 months later. It's not relevant to the market. The market is looking ahead. The market is not looking back.
So we have to look into the future, and this view is not so good?
If you want to be a successful investor, you have to look to the future. The future that I see for many things is not so good. I don't think the future is so good for stocks. The future is good for some things, but not for stocks.
When Jim Rogers is looking into the future, what are you seeing?
I see great things for agriculture. I see wonderful things. Some countries are going to have a very good time in the future. I'm afraid America and Europe are not among those countries.
You talked, for example, about Russia. Which countries do you see in the future?
Well, I'm more optimistic about Russia because Russia has huge natural resources, and it looks as though they're starting to be properly managed. Wildly optimistic about Myanmar, optimistic about North Korea. There's some Angola. There's some countries out there where good things are going on. Unfortunately, in the West, we have all these countries that are deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. That has never worked. That has never worked. And piling up more debt. America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. In the history of the world, Manuel. That is not good to pile up more and more debt. This is going to end very badly.
When we talk about countries like Russia, like Angola, what would you do there? How would you invest?
Well, I'm looking for investments in Russia. I don't know if I will find any. Unfortunately, most of the listed companies in Russia are energy companies. Well, that's not a way for me to make money. I already know about it. But I'm trying to find things that most people don't know about. I don't know if I'll find them. I'm looking maybe the ruble. I'm thinking about buying the currency. I have not found anything yet. Maybe Russian bonds. I don't know. I'll let you know when I find something.
So next time we are talking about this. What about gold? Last time you said, don't sell your gold.
Right. I wouldn't sell my gold now. The thing about gold is that at the moment, there are a lot of in America, they publish every week. The government publishes the numbers, and the speculators have been buying a lot of gold. Nearly always you do the opposite of what speculators have done. Now, they've been buying a lot of gold. I'm not selling my gold, but I certainly wouldn't jump in when you see a lot of other speculators jumping in too. That's nearly always been the wrong thing to do. So wait, I'm not selling, but if it goes down, I'll buy more.
And what about silver?
Same thing. A lot of speculators have been jumping into silver too. You know, gold has been up 12 years in a row, man. Well, that's very unusual for any asset, any time in history. So gold has been doing strange things, and now you have a lot of speculators jumping in. I'm not going to follow the speculators.
So this is the safe haven?
Well, we'll see if it's a safe haven, but I'm not selling my gold, no.
When we look to the inflation, are you afraid of anything?
Of course, aren't you? Yes, there's going to be more. There is inflation already. In America, they don't tell the truth. They lie about it. But look, India, China, all these countries say that we have inflation. America says we don't have inflation. How can nearly every country in the world have inflation except America? The American government doesn't tell the truth.
Are you afraid of the euro when we see the crisis in Europe?
Aren't you? Of course I'm afraid. I don't own any euros. I'm not short any euros. But I don't see how the euro, as we know it, can survive. I hope that some euro survives because we need something to compete with the U.S. dollar. The euro on paper would be perfect, but it's been badly executed. It's great in theory, but it's been badly executed so far. I hope that a viable euro survives.
You always talk about agriculture. What about oil?
Well, I'm optimistic. I wouldn't sell my oil either. If Spain suddenly goes bankrupt, everything is going to go down. But if that happens, I would buy more oil, I would buy gold, I would buy a lot of things if that sort of thing happens.
When we see the tech equities at the moment, Apple had a high some weeks ago. Are you interested in these kinds of equities?
I have sold short technology stocks in America. That does not mean they're going to go down, I assure you. In fact, they probably go up for a while since I sold them short. My timing is always bad. I would not be buying these stocks.
What would you buy when you would buy now at the stock market?
Agriculture. I told you I would buy agriculture. I would buy Burma, Myanmar. I'm not buying stocks anywhere in the world, though. This is not a good time to be buying, as far as I'm concerned, this is not a good time to be buying stocks anywhere in the world.
Jim Rogers, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time so much.
My pleasure, Manuel.
Und Ihnen, liebe Zuschauer, vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen. Wir sehen uns bald wieder hier vom Floor der New York Stock Exchange.